the case here as to what is it that they're did we capture exactly is what is it they're trying to accomplish. And so so I'd say those are kind of like your main things that you're doing. Also your interaction design. So literally, how does one person get from one step to the next step is another thing that UX designers focus on. So in more of a UI side of it, which is user interface, there is the visual design side of it. So like literally, how does it look to someone, the colors that are involved. A lot of graphic designers tend to get into user interface design. So interface is like literally the thing that people are seeing or touching or interacting with on the front. It's a lot with layouts and typography as well. So that's kind of the UX and UI side of things. What makes it service design is, so I'd say product design is something that's actually tends to be more of a digital product than like a physical product. And a service designer is tending to do with literally a service. So how is it that someone can organize a flow, or for instance, a store? Like, how does a store need to be laid out so that people can get in efficiently, find what they need, do like line up to pay for it and get out, right? Like, so that's not a service. A product is a service of literally how people move and flow. You'll actually really quite see it a bit more interchangeably in terms of if you're looking for job applications, and if you're trying to literally put into Google or LinkedIn, you might actually need to put in a combination of these words, like customer experience designer, UX designer, UX researcher, UI, because those words are used quite interchangeably. And that's partially because people are still trying to understand what is it that all of these things do. And so there's a bit of that language that's still being figured out in the industry, or like I said, used quite interchangeably, particularly around people who are making the job adverts. So that is kind of the first question of things that I want to describe in terms of the practical difference. A lot of it is also these two sides of, so you have the research side and the execution side of the design. You also have the digital and a product and a kind of, I wouldn't say that physical products don't exist as well. They need to be thought of, the user needs to be thought of in that space, but I'd say the manifestation of how design is happening in our world right now is typically a bit more in the digital space than the physical space. Okay. Did I have a background in design? No, I didn't. The closest thing I had to a background was working with architects and other stakeholders to finalize the constructability of a building. And finish those designs. So I'll get more into what my transferable skills were, and some of the people that I know on the call and are teachers and whatnot. So I'll speak to some of the things that you guys already do as to how those can be transferable. But no, I did not have a background in design. And like I said, I started in design literally less than a year ago. So why did I choose UX design? And to be honest, I didn't know that I definitely wanted to go into UX design. I was honestly just looking to move out of the construction industry, and thought that it would be good to do something that was related to tech, since it was a skill set that didn't seem like it was going anywhere, and a demand that wasn't going anywhere. And it would allow me to hopefully work remotely, because if you don't know by now, I'm very much about a travel lifestyle and a location-independent lifestyle. So this was something that I felt like could get me into that space. So another thing that I would, so basically I just started going to this General Assembly was having like courses that they were pretty much putting out for free. And it wasn't even about the design stuff that initially got me really interested in it. For me, it was that they were doing a workshop about finding meaningful work. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to go to something like that, finding work that I that I love. And that's what got me kind of in the door to initially go to their sessions in the first place. So once I continued going to those sessions, they had like kind of a free one for each of the courses. I went to literally every one of them to figure out what is it in tech that I wanted to do. And I was really struck by the presentations that were happening for UX design, because the people who were talking about it were happy. Like they were excited to be in the industry. Everyone else, like they spoke how highly they spoke of people in the industry, and what they were doing. For me, that was something that was really eye opening. And there were because it was quite different than how I was feeling in in the construction industry. So and I felt like I had some transferable skills, so I figured I'd give it a go. Let's see, next question. How did I choose a UX design course? So one of the things that I urge you to consider, I guess, first, what did the course teach me? So look, I took the UX design immersive course. So it was a full-time, about 10 and a half week, 11-week course, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So it's about 400 hours plus the extra time spent on projects. So there was things about, like I said, I'll go through what I learned, but there may be some terminology you're not familiar with, and that's okay. Can't quite get into all of it now, but about user scenarios. It's how does one person get from one, what is their thought process and how they actually go about completing a task. Screen flows for layouts of how do you get from one screen to the next. That information architecture of how to organize information and menus and whatnot, so that people can find things easily. There were business model plans, literally how would a business need to evolve and change to bring in what you're advising them and consulting them on to evolve their product. You learned the design, the research side of it as well. I would say it's probably more heavily on the research and the design. The vision does definitely get into design. You need to be able to not only to translate that research and analyze that research. The literal the pixel perfect and big visual things, like the larger visual things they cover, the more details in terms of really getting into typography and the color and things that would kind of sit a bit more on that user interface side. I wouldn't say they got into very deeply, so you might want to complement that, particularly potentially with either a graphic design course or something in that space. And if you really want to get into the heart of the actual visual design part of it, this is having you think in a larger scale and in a larger overview. So that's high level of what it taught. How did I go about creating a portfolio without having worked in design yet? So I'd say that it was, first of all, that having a portfolio website has become the prerequisite for being able to apply to design jobs. I had 3 case studies from the General Assembly course, and that I was able to make into projects. And so that was helpful because they actually, helped you work on your portfolio during the course. So by the time you graduated, you had those 3 in there. And then I've also had design challenges, so like 2 to 3 design challenges as I was applying for jobs, and I've used that to put into my portfolio as well. So it was already kind of started with 3, added 2 more. So by the time I was really, really applying for jobs, I had 5 projects that were in there. Also, there are websites I think it's like 100 days of UX design, or like daily challenges that you can, that provide you a topic for you to do a design for. So, or you can just in general pick a problem that you or a friend has, and for you to, or for like a website or an app, and anything that you've seen this kind of stuck in your claw that you're like, man, I just wish that this would work better. So you're more than welcome to pick a problem and do some research on it and put together a concept design. You can also Google UX portfolios to see examples for portfolios that are out there. But basically, also I warn you, don't go overboard trying to compare yourself and to kind of what someone else's portfolio looks like. Some will be because there's so many different aspects of UX design and like UI and customer and whatnot, you'll see that people will be displaying their talents in different ways. So some will be more text heavy, some will be more visual heavy, and that's just displaying what they're trying to go after. So how did I show that my background was transferable? So first of all, say hopefully it gives you comfort to know that a lot of people got into this industry by transitioning into the industry. So they started out in something else. UX design is a relatively new new industry, and by that I mean like kind of like a less than 10 years in terms of it being formalized. And so in that way, it's not like it's been around for forever and a day, like being a lawyer or a doctor, and people are understanding that they're coming from another industry. So in terms of what I thought was transferable for me and what may be for you, especially said some of the people on here are in the teaching space. If you can, and this I'll combine in general in terms of a little bit of what the next question is in terms of soft skills that are useful to have. So if you are proactive, if you collaborate well with people, if you have a high level of communication ability, especially cross-functionally with teams, if you're good at translating or distilling information so that people can make it that it's more simple for them, if you can analyze data and see trends and insights, if you're organized, if you can understand a bigger picture in terms of how it's not really about what you're individually about what your design is, it's about how it fits into the larger goal of the company and what the customer needs. If you're good at time management, good at listening, good at confirming that what you've listened and translating that into action in that way as well. And to make sure that you understood correctly. So reflecting it back to the person. This is not a space, design is not a space for egos. So it's not about you, it's about the customer. And so your ability to take constructive feedback is very key. Your ability to be able to filter that feedback, because everyone will have an opinion, is also a key. Being open, being able to synthesize information, being persuasive, your ability to present, and be able to define scope and get that clear for people and get people on the same page. Anything about stakeholder management that you've done. So really, those are the kind of highlights for me for soft skills. And those are things that I pretty much had to do in my role beforehand. I did a lot of workshop facilitation, I said, to be able to get designs to the end. A lot of times I was working with doctors and surgeons and nurses and hospital administrators, not people who understood construction very much, right? So I had to really get from them, what is it that what's their model of care? How is it that they do their day-to-day, actually observing them and watching them run around and see where they place things and whatever. And so doing a lot of observation in that space helped me to see, okay, this is what they need, even if they couldn't potentially voice it. I could see it by observing them. So if you've had any of that in your background, any of those soft skills that I've listed, it won't be difficult for you to be able to prove that you can transition into UX design, because all of those are really key to be able to have. Excuse me. In terms of hard technical skills that are useful to have, you will learn, I guess, Sketch or Figma, which are pretty much the two main design programs that are being used to do designs in. I'd say Figma is probably even more so than Sketch. They're not very different from each other in terms of actually using them or the ease of use. The main difference is that Figma is cloud-based, so it allows for people to be able to share content, share designs a lot more easily and be in them at the same time. And saves your stuff kind of like automatically as you go. And it has prototyping, which is actually building in like the clicking. If you like pressed this or swiped that, whatever, what would be the next thing. So it makes it feel like it's actually a website or an app that people are interacting with, but it's just an interactive design. I say a good eye for, and this kind of comes in more to your graphic design, a good eye for spacing, alignment, layout, typography, color kind of deal. But like I said, there are some roles that are not like design. So if you're going to be in a UX researcher role, or some more of that service design role, and not like an actual and a product in terms of a digital product, then you're not going to be literally on the tools, as we would say, as often. Some kind of project management tool is good to have as a hard skill. So like a Trello, Asana, an Airtable, a Jira, Favro, something, because basically your projects are moving along in different pieces and spaces. So it's good to be able to have a way to be able to maintain that, and particularly because design is not in a vacuum. Design is very much, if you're designing a physical, a digital product, very much connected to the development team. And so you need to be able to volley back and forth with each other. Some kind of digital whiteboard, because a lot of this can either happen remotely, or whether it be workshops or collaboration, even with your own, with clients, with their customers, or with your own internal teams. So we use Miro or Mira. Those are two different companies. And so as like a digital whiteboard space, so that people can jump in and do it at the same time. Conferencing tools like Zoom, Hangout, Microsoft Teams. So as you see, like they're not super different in terms of things that you would need for other industries as well. So that's kind of a bit more on the hard skills side of things. I would say like Adobe is not really used as much in our space, but I mean, like, if you have Photoshop or Illustrator skills, by any means, go for it. How did I build my network, my design network? Look, this will be like literally is a whole other video in itself. So I'll just give you the very, very high points, because like we could spend another 40 minutes talking about that. But my highlights are, one, LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, figure it out and get on it, please. Because it's very much a space where designers are, you would think it'd be Twitter or something like that, but it's actually LinkedIn. As there are other platforms as well, but if you want to be with the community as well as getting a job, LinkedIn is definitely a place to be. I go to design related meetups and talks and events. So you get to see and actually meet people in the community. A lot of those are happening digitally as well right now during this time. So there is still an ability to connect and be a part of Slack groups as well. I also did a lot of coffee chats and informational interviews with people. So that was super key, because you can be on job boards all the day long. However, if it's not really building those connections is probably the best way that you're going to go about getting a job. And interviewing at volunteering at design related conferences. Not only do you get in for free and you get to see the content that's being presented as well when you're not volunteering, but you're also having the opportunity to meet the speakers and other people who are there as participants. So that was super key for me in the beginning, especially. How did I go about looking for jobs? So I also could do another video on this, but the top 3 that I'd say was connecting with recruiters. They're not all bad. So have some kind of relationship with a recruiter that's in the design space. Signing up for alerts on job boards. But I'd say the biggest thing was really tapping into the network that I was starting to create, mostly through LinkedIn. And asking people for those coffee chats and those interviews, and they suggested other people that I should talk to, and then I had like so many eyes helping to look out for me as well as my own. So let's see, how long did it take me to get a job offer after finishing my studies? Look, it took me 4.5 months, and I think it would have taken me less time if I didn't choose to travel internationally for a month, move cities, and go to a city where it's very relationship built, and I had to create a brand new network as well. So oh, look, I just got a gift from Zoom that they have removed the 40-minute time limit on our group meeting. Yes, this is great news for you. So I don't know how much longer they'll allow me to talk, but I'll talk to it so I can at least get through this, because I saw I'm at 31 minutes and I'm like, no. But I won't keep you too much longer because I'm really big about respecting time. That's major for me. So anyway, yeah, like I said, I moved to a city, like I said, that was very design community based, like meeting people in person. And I hadn't done that yet because I just moved there. So I had to pretty much start my networking in person from scratch. And they weren't as open to hiring junior designers. So with all of those as my obstacles, it was still 4.5 months that I was able to get a job from graduating my boot camp to actually getting a full-time offer. Oh, actually, I'd say a full-time offer that I accepted. I got other full-time offers, but I wasn't actually like as excited about them. So one that I like. But look, it's not abnormal for it to take up to 6 months or so to find your first job in it. And after you find your first job, your next one will be so much easier to roll into. And I would say still stay connected to recruiters and people in the network that you have met along the way, even after you've found a job, because there's so much that can continually come up that is of interest to you. So don't still continue to feed that network. So then let's say, after, what's the next one? What is my day-to-day like as a designer? So that's a mix of when sometimes I'm doing kind of what we would consider quick wins, which is like, hey, we're doing like a really quick refresh of a page that already exists, or there's something that's slightly minor about how this interaction is going that we want to be able to tweak and get better. So there's if it's something like that, then the day-to-day is very much like, okay, figure out what the initial client requirements are from the whatever team it is that initiated that request. So sometimes that request can come from our customer success team, sometimes it comes from the development team, sometimes it comes from the CEO. And to really figure out what that time frame is like, and sitting down, typically one of us as designers would lead the charge on that, and in terms of doing the design, and get feedback along the way from either other designers in the team or people outside of our team as well. So in that way, if it's like shorter things, it's usually something that you sit down, gather requirements, do research, do a design, have feedback along the way, and get ready to prepare those designs for handover to the devs, as well as including the devs in the conversation as well. When it's a longer term project, literally that is a lot more work in terms of the workshops that you have to put together to be able to pull information out of people. Your process, you may see like what's called a double diamond in terms of your discovery phase, is you're going broad to being able to bring it down to narrow down what your scope definition is going to be, to doing the discovery phase again when you're designing, and then bringing it back down to finalizing that design. So there's this constant ebb and flow. There's never really quite an end point of design, of research, and beginning point of design. And there's a lot of how do you call it, iteration that happens along the way. So until something actually gets into literally finalized in development. What do I enjoy about design? Foremost for me is that it's an industry full of nice people, which may not have been the top of mind of what you would have thought of has been like, my top thing as to what I enjoy about it. But I have yet to meet a nasty soul, which is fabulous. Everyone that I've encountered has been open to having a chat, which has been absolutely amazing. And it just, so that for me is gold. I not only get to have an opinion about how I think something should be, or being able to pull that out from people as well, but I'm also able to help do something about it. So help to be a voice for customers. help businesses evolve. So it's not some, not just talking about it, you're actually having the skill set to do something about it, which is major. And the thing is also, like, a lot of people get to benefit from the fruits of my labor. So in that way, you get to impact a lot of people kind of at once. So it just in that way feels like you're able to kind of help people in at scale, which is just an amazing space to be able to be in. So if you have that opportunity to do so, then by all means, it's a great feeling. So that's about that more intrinsic feeling. In terms of what I don't enjoy as much about design, so for me, it's heavily digital as the outcome, and I say, or the manifestation of what you're doing. So for me, I've come from a very spatial background. Like, what I've created is dealing with how do people interact in a physical space, and so for me, that's been a personal shift. Although I was like, yay, doing something that allows me to work remotely, and that's amazing by all means. But I don't believe that has to come at the cost of really realizing how is it that what you're creating is really a tool or a mechanism to help people um, interact with their physical space in a more efficient way. There's always going to be a physical manifestation of what you're doing how it's going to impact them in their physical space. Meaning, for instance, if you're helping to create like the Uber apps, Uber Eats app, right? Really, you're doing that for the purpose that people can have food, so that there's going to be literally a physical manifestation of what you're doing. So when people start lose the reasoning behind what they're doing, that is for literally humans to be able to do something in a physical space and make that easier. That's when I don't appreciate. So that's very much something that I keep front and center for it to also remain as like a human-centered design. It's not only something that's happening in a digital space. So always keep that in mind, at least I do. Another thing. So you design things and they're magnificent, or you think they're magnificent, and you get feedback that they're magnificent, and they get stripped back by the time they actually go into design and go into development. And it gets to being like what the minimal viable product is for that. So you feel like your baby has been reduced into something that you almost don't recognize anymore. So in that way, that like when I told you design, you can't have an ego in design. This is part of what I mean as well. So ultimately, it's about being able to also push something out that is feasible. So that can't be lost, and is one of the requirements as well. And I say probably the next kind of biggest thing for me is that a lot of companies actually still don't get design's role and importance beyond the visual. So even if they have a design part of their group, a design team, they're still trying to figure out where does design sit in the process. And design is not just to make something look more pretty. There's actually strategic value in that. And for instance, companies wouldn't need to put so much money in marketing if their product or service was actually taking care of the need that the customer has. So the customer is actually actively looking and seeking to be able to use that product or service, right? So how do you allow them to be able to do that more efficiently? And how do you create something that is more in line with what they actually want? So in that way, people kind of can sometimes miss the opportunity of what design can do a bit like higher up the chain than at the end, just to, like I said, make it look more visually appealing. We're getting to the end here. So things to keep in mind. So Are you interested in more any of research or design, or like, visual design? Are you interested in contract versus full-time? Are you interested in being in a big company versus a small company, a startup versus an established company, an agency, so being in-house with a company in terms of like actually being hired directly by them, working for an agency or consultancy that you are just borrowed out to work on projects kind of at pieces in time. All of these kind of things work quite differently depending on what side of the fence you you are on. Whether you want to be remote or in person. I've started in doing design. Actually, no, I actually didn't start doing it design, in person. Did it remotely. So like my final project with General Assembly was actually a remote project. Like the team, we were in Sydney, the client was in Melbourne, and everyone we were interviewing was either in the States or in Canada or some other country, or not in Sydney. So my first actual introduction to UX design in terms of consultancy was definitely actually a remote project. When I started my full-time position, yes, we were all in our office, but clearly we've moved into doing things digitally and remotely right now. So, and it's still ticking on. So you may not exactly find your first role being a remote, but it's definitely possible. And we're proving it in this day and age that it's definitely possible. And let's see, the size of the design team. So whether if you're a small design team, you're probably doing a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the pushing and pulling, and you're not getting as much feedback. But you also get to be like king or queen of the castle in terms of the design space. But that also puts a lot on you to make sure that you're not only seeing your point of view, that you're actually really actively going out and seeking that feedback and that research. How developed a company's processes are is very key as well. So if, how they go through the design process, and especially how they go through the handoff through the development process, and how the designers help to be involved in that process of development along the way. So the essence is not really lost, and that people understand why is it that the design looks and feels the way that it is. And which brings me to how well the design team and the devs team work together. So that's also key to try to understand for a company that you're looking to work with. And if they have a design system, particularly if this is a product, a digital product, you want to be able to basically be able to pull the elements that the product uses most frequently into kind of like it's a library. So you can pull from that library and keep the product looking consistent as you're designing new features and refreshing pages and whatnot. UX design resources. There are way too many for me to list here. So I have started to put together a shared Google Doc, and I've put that in the private Facebook group, which I will email you guys about how to access it. And invite you guys to as well, because it's not just about UX design. It's also something, it's also about how is it that you can literally make a transition in your career, whether that's for a job, rather a career change, people who are wanting to go on long-term travel or moving abroad. So that's what that group is about. And so UX design is definitely an space that people are looking to move into as well, to help them be remote. And it's just a thriving industry. Okay, next I will go through so that's it from me in terms of the prepared questions. We're at 45 minutes, so I was close to the 40 minutes, and that I wanted to personally speak for a little less. So I apologize for going over in that. I just wanted to give you as much kind of content as I could. If people are able to stay on, great. I'll continue going through, because I'll first deal with address some of the questions I've gotten from. Is it Shobana or Shobana? I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If you want to come up off of mute. I will just address the questions that I've gotten from her first, and then I will go into the chat group. So first, Can I touch upon the best courses that are available so we can evaluate apart from General Assembly? So like I said, I have a tab in the resources Google Doc that I've created. So for a list of a couple others. I'd say I personally said wasn't searching around much personally because I had already created that connection with GA. So I will just, put the caveat is that I haven't taken any of these courses, but these are ones that I'm coming across. And I quickly saw in the chat that there were some other ones that were put in there. So I'll like I said, take what's been in the chat as well and add that to the spreadsheet. So I'll leave that question to the spreadsheet. Will UX design become more automated and specialized in the next 5 years? Man, so look, I can only give you my take on it, and heaven knows what's going on exactly in the next 5 years because we don't even know what's going on tomorrow, particularly in the situation that we're in now. So look, I'll only speak for like the very limited and cloudy crystal ball that I have. So in terms of it being more automated, look, I think, yeah, there's definitely opportunities there for design itself actually to become more automated, which is why I would suggest that you not only focus on just the visual aspect of things and really try to understand actually more holistically what the heart and soul about it being a human-centered design and really understanding what humans need from it, and so that it's not as easily for something to be spit out by a computer generated concept of something. It will still need to have humans. I still foresee a need to have humans understanding humans, and until the technology is quite there in an AI world, we're still needing to be involved in that piece. In terms of more specialized, this has been interesting because I feel like it's gone from being more specialized as an industry to less specialized, and maybe it will fan out again. And by that I mean you had people who were just researchers and just visual designers and just I don't know, writers, but more and more actually you've gone to see that that companies are wanting more of this hybrid going on right now. So that's been, so you've seen like kind of less specialization happening because there's more of an expectation that people can cross a lot of different skill sets. So it could potentially become more specialized as we fan out again, in terms of as technology changes, as people's desires and needs change as humans. But I feel like if anything, we've gone from being more specialized to less specialized and maybe more specialized again later. So what does the future hold for UX designers? Once again, like I said, I'd say the future in terms of, I'd probably say that the need for UX design is not going anywhere. In fact, that's actually expanding as companies really do realize that they're needing to speak to their customers on a human level and not at their customers. But there is so in that space, like I think the future is definitely strong. I think that the design, at least before we were going into all of this with COVID, the focus was leading more towards predictive and intuitive AI, so that people can, it's using that artificial intelligence to literally be able to have people interact with things in a bit more seamless fashion. There was a rise of voice, like in terms of what's happening with like Alexa, and how do people use design for voice interaction. So I'd say voice and AI were probably the things that were trending quite a bit, at least towards the end of 2019, coming into 2020. And also this really push of designing with, not for, meaning that you're very much like alongside the people that you're going to, and having them involved in the design process as well, not like going away, like taking their inputs, going away, and then coming back. It's like actually very well having them along in the process. So I'd say that if we continue along that track, I think that's what the future will hold. But like I said, I can only imagine the new requirements and demands that will be on the industry as we come out of COVID-19. So usage of UX design beyond known applications. Like I said, that's UX and I hopefully can stress this enough. It is not literally just about the visual design of it. So like UX design in terms of is usually the user, human, customer. So there will always be this in terms of known applications, like there will always be this need to discover what people need and want. So if you can think of it at that higher level, will always be the usage and application for user experience design. Does the GA immersive course help to keep in mind for future requirements? I say that in terms of AI and like voice and whatnot, they're not introducing that yet into the program, but they have done, like they do update the program. So actually just this weekend, coming up in 2 weekends, they're releasing content to people who have recently gone through the course. And that content didn't exist while we were in the course, but they have now introduced it to the course. And I think it's made the course now like maybe 2 weeks longer or a week longer, but they're making that content available for people who have graduated from the course. So when they do update, and that's just like, okay, we've noticed that the industry is moving in this direction. Here's some extra, here's some new content. So I would say like they're necessarily so forward thinking so much as it is that like they're definitely wanting to keep pace at least with the industry, and they update the program in that space. Suggested sectors that UX is thriving. Look, UX is actually not, and it in itself is not, I guess it is an industry, but it's an industry that supports so many other industries. So it will be continuing to thrive because what makes a UX designer really useful is that you're able to understand things in any industry. You have to, because you have the ability to research and to speak to people and understand humans, right? So even though there are people in different industries, the desires and the needs of humans more holistically isn't so different. While you may see UX closely aligned to the tech industry, that is not to say that there aren't a number of other industries. Healthcare, for instance, people need models. There are so many industries that it applies to. So because, like I said, humans are literally at the center of who we're designing for. It's definitely not all contract based. As in terms of the next question, is it all contract based or does it have longevity? No, like I said, I'm a full-time employee, and you will find a mix of full-time and contract-based work. And I'd say the contracts typically get extended because things just tend to take longer than anyone ever anticipated. And how critical was my project within the overall structure of the business? And I'm correct me if I'm wrong in terms of how I'm interpreting that question, but what we design is, in terms of the projects of design, are either, so they've been features that the company is going to introduce to their clients for a product that already exists. So a new functionality, or like I said, new pages, like pages are being refreshed so that they can be more useful and kind of more up to date with more modern expectations as to how to interact with a page or a feature. So I'd say it's definitely critical because it's a strategic stance and not just a visual stance. So hopefully I've answered those questions as you were hoping for. And then now I'll just turn my attention to the chat group to see if I can get through those really as quickly as possible. And also, like I said, be aware of your time, because we're definitely over more than I would have anticipated. But if you're here, I'm here, right? So let's see. Give me a moment while I scroll and just try to make sure that I have gotten this. So tools application I use on a daily basis. So like I said, Slack, Miro. So Slack is just for communication. Miro for a digital whiteboard, Figma for actually designing, and Favro is our project management tool to like a Kanban board style of kind of moving the projects along. We use Google Suite, so that's Google Docs and Drive and email and whatnot. I'd say those are the ones that I'm using most in my daily life. Like I said, Sketch is still a design tool as well, it's used quite a bit still. I work for a UX. So do I work for a UX firm or I'm a freelancer? I work for a UX. So I worked for a software company that had a UX design team in it, or a product design team in it. I am now moving to a UX design consultancy that is going to be consulting for government clients and private clients as well. So I'm not going to be responsible for finding my own clients. They will come to us. I have not freelanced in a full-time, like in that capacity. And that's more or less because I'd say probably the biggest thing that keeps me from it right now at this point in my career is that I really enjoy that feedback that I'm getting from other designers, and that feedback loop. And so as I'm still building my skills, for me, that's really important to have that available to me. And it's not to say that it wouldn't be available if I freelanced, but I would have to very much create that community of designers that we bounce things off of each other. So for me, at this point in my career, that's why I'm not freelancing. But by all means, definitely something to go forward with. What different types of UX projects have I worked on so far? So in terms of my full-time job, it's a software company that develops HR products, or rather it's an HR company. How would you say? It is an HR software company. And so literally it's how to help companies be more efficient in terms of their people and data management of their employees and communication with their employees, and making sure that they're all compliant with the training and stuff that they need to be able to do their jobs, and on their onboarding process and their offboarding process. So a bit like Workday, if you've come across Workday before. But in terms of like what I've done concept designs for, a financial planning app, and like budgeting app, a Qantas, which is the airplane air company, commercial airplane company. Airplane sound. And let's see, what a food truck, for like a San Francisco food truck. What else? So one of the clients that I actually had when I was finishing up my UX design course, was a company who was a startup to help other startups scale. So it's about creating a platform for them to have entrepreneurs find other basically help with the business needs that they had for their own businesses. So people will be able to find each other, a bit like Upwork, but for longer term projects. Let's see, what else did I help with? A bike company, like a commercial retail bike company. And what was another one? The other one? There's probably a couple other that I'm blanking on, but a church. A church. So like, yeah, there's been a mix, as I can say, that's been in a lot of different industries, right? So as I say that, and I wasn't fluent in any of them to begin with, right? But that's the beauty of UX design, you learn. So cool. Thanks, Amanda, for mentioning the free course. I will add that to the spreadsheet. And also about Thinkful, that's great. And let's see, resources. Okay, after resources, could I talk about struggles, fears you had in making the transition, and advice you'd give to others to help overcome these as they make the transition? Struggles. So struggles is that you will encounter some people who can't see your transferable skills. So you have to help them see that. Because when I told people I was moving from construction into design, they were like, what the what? Like they couldn't see what the connection would be. And so you really have to help people, take people along that journey, and to help them understand that. So that was a struggle in terms of explaining that to people in a way that they, in their language, in the way they get it. Fears. Look, one of my fears is that it was going to be that something that I couldn't get a job in as quickly as I would have liked, or that I'm not a designer. Like, so how is it that I can go from not designing at all to within 3 months being a quote unquote designer, and then being able to have a company pay for it, and then be able to be on a call like this to talk to you about it, right? So that was definitely like, how am I going to be able to do that in this short time frame? So that was definitely something I was, that I was like, how is this going to happen? But very much I'm grateful to, like I said, the community I surrounded myself with, and the course that I took. Another fear is that, like, I had to start all over again. Like, so I was making like a really good money in my other role, and to go from that to making like less than half to begin with was definitely something that was going to be like, wow, okay, like this is something I'm going to have to temporarily deal with, right? So like, you're stripped of your titles, you're stripped of your income, the income that you might have had. And that's more, I would say that's more of an ego. So one of it is like, yes, the money thing is real in terms of like, so, it's not that that's not real, but actually when I looked at it, for me, that ended up being more of an ego thing, because I was already living on less from my income anyway and saving it. So for me, what it impacted is that I had less savings, less to put towards savings. But the ego thing about like your title and, your roles and your positions, like you have to let go of if you're going to literally transition into that, and start again. Which is yet another reason why I encourage you to join the private Facebook group, because it's literally a space to help people go through that transition. That's more about like moving past yourself. So that's kind of like the largest scale in terms of advice stuff that I'm able to give on this call, and we'll be able to do a much better justice of that within the group. And to also, like I said, remain aware of time. So can I address, yep. Let's see. And you work for HR, okay, works for an HR company as well. So, and no one ever knows what the business is. So yeah, in that way, I get that, Anna. So look, those were all the questions that I, like I said, had to, in terms of the common questions I get, and the questions I got emailed, and the questions that I've gotten from here in the chat group. So if there isn't anything else that you'd like to be able to ask me, like kind of, it's a bit of like a speak now, forever hold your peace kind of deal, or not forever. I can address more of these later, but at least for the moment of this call. Otherwise, I will encourage you, like I said, I'll send you an email with ability to join the group, like I said, which will have some other resources in there that I've alluded to today, as well as an opportunity for you to be able to have some support as people go through this, as you go through this process and others go through this process, to be able to shift, basically. So if you want to also like save the chat, you're able to do that too. There's if you open the chat, there's like these 3 horizontal buttons there, and you can go to save chat, and that'll save it in a folder for you as well. So at any rate, thank you so much for taking the time as well to stick with me. And I'm glad that it was helpful for you as well. So thank you for the messages that you have come in. I'm also, when I just send you this kind of like final email, it would be like, hey, just any feedback, definitely I'm open to it. You get open to feedback, very much so when you're in the design space, because as I said, you take ego out of it, and I want to understand how I can make things better for you and others. So I'll give you this last opportunity to come off mute if there's anything else. And if not, then we'll end. So I'll give a second.
Well,
Cool.
I really want to say thank you. This is my first time really learning about UX design, and I've been teaching for about 4 years now, and I am looking to do something new, something different, and I think that this can work for me. So you really address some worries that I've had and just some questions in general that I didn't know a lot to. So thank you so much. And I hope that you continue with these sessions just to teach us more and to share any other insight that you may have.
Definitely. Oh, great. Thank you so much. I'm glad that it was useful to you. And thank you for jumping on. So, yay, this is good news. Anyone else? You're all good? Awesome. All right. Great. Well, thank you all. And I look forward to being able to serve you more in a private Facebook group. It's called Leaping for Change. So like I said, I'll include the link to that, but that's what it is. Awesome. All right. Take care. Bye.
Well, bye.